Hey friends, it's Rachel
and Shira. Welcome to our Zoom Out podcast.
We're two close friends who love having honest, vulnerable conversations about life, healing, and all the messy, beautiful parts of being human.
We definitely don't have all the answers, but we have a deep desire to see life from a wider lens.
We're here to ask questions, share our stories along the way, be real with each other and with you.
So if you've ever felt like there's a bigger picture you're not always seeing, you're not alone.
Let's zoom out
together. Hey everyone. Welcome back. This week we're talking about listening. It's the one where we define listening. This might be one of my favorite topics because listening is just so important. A lot of times in situations, the number one problem is a lack of listening. And I think what we're here to do today is to define listening. Like, what does that actually mean? You know, a lot of times we say, you don't listen to me. I want to be heard. What does that mean?
I also think like listening, we're going to have a whole other episode about communication, but listening is such a big part of communication because without
it's the first step.
It's the first step, you know, you can't communicate without listening. So what is it? In our definition, listening is really just about putting our own walls down and breaking our egos and coming from a place of vulnerability to listen to others.
The huge thing is breaking ego.
Yeah, that's like the big winner here.
Yeah, a lot of times that can get in the way. I recently had a situation. I went through like a health journey. Maybe I'll talk about it when I feel more comfortable, but
a safe space.
Yeah, I went through like a health thing, and I like debated telling certain friends about it because I've had situations before where I felt like they don't care as much. So I was like, I don't know if I want to tell them because I was really stressed about it and I didn't want to be having all these like external thoughts while I was going through it. And I ended up telling them. And of course, I was disappointed by their reactions. And instead of saying how I feel, I guess, I like just held on to anger and then I caught myself with those same people like all the times that I felt hurt by them. And that's not to say I was wrong. I don't know who, like, obviously I felt the way I felt.
Yeah, exactly.
And they made me feel that way. But I wish I could go back and communicate in that moment how it made me feel instead of shutting down. A lot of times I do that.
Because you're also, part of it is like listening to yourself.
Yeah, like listening to how I felt in that moment and just going for it. And yeah, I just wish. And Rachel, I love how she always says it's never too late to communicate, to listen. And I think a big part of listening to others is listening to yourself and listening to how you feel and not being scared to like open up about it. And that's, again, like a whole different topic about communication, but they do go hand in hand. So yeah, I think I learned from that to just listen to myself, communicate with myself, and not be scared to let it out.
I love that. I also have a story time. This was interesting. I think this was about last year. My best friend Esty and we went on a girls trip with a few girls, whatever it was, like an Airbnb somewhere. And we were playing a game by the fire pit. And it was one of those games like Let's Get Deep or something. Yeah. One of those like We're Not Really Strangers. And so what we were doing we were asking questions and people around would answer for that person. So one of the questions was like, what was the first thing you recognized about her or you saw in her, something like that. So we're all answering it about Esty. And me being her best friend, I think that I just wanted in that moment to just be a little lighter, like not that the energy was heavy, but I think I was just trying to like, make a joke and say something funny and just like whatever. And I ended up saying something that really hurt her feelings, but I didn't realize it in the moment. And so afterwards, she was trying to talk to me about it. We spoke about it once, but again, I didn't really hear her. I wasn't really listening. So then the trip ends, we go home because we live together, and we're sitting on the couch, and she's like, hey, can I talk to you about something? I'm like, yeah, of course. So we're sitting on the couch, and she's explaining to me about the situation and how what I said really hurt her feelings. And I just remember this moment within myself as she's talking. I'm listening to every word she's saying, but I'm sitting there having this a little bit of this like internal dialogue with myself to say, okay, my best friend is telling me that I'm hurting her, and my knee-jerk reaction is to go into this kind of selfish ego dialogue of going, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad friend. Oh my God, I don't want to hurt her. This is so bad, like making it about me. And I recognize that dialogue was happening, and I just paused and I said, 1 second, this isn't about me at all.
Yes,
this
breaking down the ego.
Like I recognized my ego in that moment, and even the ego, you can see it as like, oh, but that's so nice, like you don't want to be a bad friend. No, because at the end of the day, my ego, it's just about me. And I instead of feeling my fear of not being a good friend, I shifted. I literally remember sitting there being so conscious about that and being so intentional of like, okay, let me shift it to, let me just put my ego aside for a second, like literally picturing my ego aside, and let me just hear what she has to say.
Yes.
And like what she's actually trying to tell me. So, and it was really hard. It sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's a really difficult moment just because you have to be super intentional in that throughout that conversation, right? Or throughout conversations with people. So we're sitting there, she's talking, she's telling me her feelings. And instead of having this lens of, oh my God, I'm such a bad friend, I go, okay, let me just hear what she has to say. And essentially she was just telling me, she was explaining to me all that I really took out of it. What I heard was she just didn't feel loved by me in that moment. Because it was a moment for me, an opportunity that I could have said all the amazing things that I love about her and that I first recognized in her, since we've known each other since we were children, but I didn't take the opportunity. Right. And so when I walked out of the conversation, it was a great conversation. It was very communicative. We hugged at the end and everything. And obviously I'm apologizing for not, being a good friend, for not hearing her, for not everything, for not hearing her the first time, because this was the second time we had this conversation, much longer and whatever, more detailed. So anyways, I walked away, and instead of holding that thing of like, okay, I'm not a good friend, I'm like, okay, how can I make her feel loved? So what I ended up doing was the next day I went to Walgreens and I bought a card, like a best friend card, and I started writing in it. And I just remember, this was like I think last year, but I just remember how I started the card was I kind of redid it. So I started it with the question that we asked in the game. Yeah. I think it was like, what was the first thing you recognized about Esty, about her? And then I started writing my real answer, like my vulnerable answer, everything that I love about her, everything I recognize in her. Cute. Like I just remember writing that she just makes all these like mundane things feel so special.
Shout out to Esty.
Esty's the best
person.
We love Esty. But I just remember sitting there writing that card, and we lived together, so this isn't creepy, but she wasn't home, and I just went into her room, I put it on her bed, and then I went back to my room doing my thing, whatever, I was working or whatever it was. And I think about like an hour later, she came home, and like I heard the door open, and then 5 minutes later, I hear a knock on my door, like my bedroom door. And she just comes in just in tears, like truly in tears, like happy tears. And she comes in tears, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I just want to tell you how much this card really meant to me, because all I wanted to feel was loved. And I said to her, I'm really sorry that I didn't make you feel loved, because you are so loved. I love you so much that I hope this just shows you, like I wanted to do a redo, and that's what I was telling Shira, like it's never too late to communicate, because even though she didn't feel loved in that moment, she is loved. And I wanted to show her I wanted to take my free will, right? Like we all have choices every second. Use my free will, make the choice to show her, you are so loved. I love you so much. I never want you to feel like you're not loved. And I think that was like a huge just moment for us in our relationship, because at least for me, it was a huge learning lesson. I've said that story to a few people, just to really show the powerful message of what it really means to be listening, because I totally could have walked away from that conversation like beating myself up and making it about me, but instead I really just said, okay, like I want to hear what she has to say. What is her soul like saying to me?
Right.
You know?
And listening is not hearing. I think it's two different things. Hearing is passive, and listening is really just listening and like comprehending at the same time. And I love that story because it really shows how it's so simple to just listen to like people, and it's simple, but it's hard, obviously.
It's hard, and I'll tell you why, because
the ego.
it's the ego. And you know what's the opposite of ego? Vulnerability.
Exactly.
Because once we are vulnerable, the ego is absent.
Right.
And I think for me, like, it was really vulnerable for me, even though I love her and we have a beautiful relationship, it was very vulnerable for me in that moment to be like, okay, I recognize that I'm being a bad friend, but instead of sitting in those feelings or in beating myself up mode, I'm going to go and do something about it. And I'm going to do it from a vulnerable place. And I wrote like a very vulnerable card of just like essentially a huge love letter to her of how much I love her. But it really took me not just like putting my ego, but being conscious that my ego was even in play in the first place. Like it really is just about being intentional. And like that's the whole reason of like, that's the whole point of zooming in to zoom out, zooming out to zoom in, all of that. It's really just about being vulnerable. That's the most powerful choice we can make as humans.
Yeah. And a lot of times the ego can withhold you from listening to yourself too. Like in my story with my friends, like I should have listened to my instinct to not tell them, because that's what I needed in that moment, because I knew that was going to happen. But also to listen to myself and to say how I feel in that moment, and to break down my ego of being scared. Why am I scared to tell them how I feel? Because of my ego. Yeah. Because my ego is like, I don't want them to think I'm like weak or like I'm like whatever.
Or recognizing thinking that your feelings don't matter. Right. Like that's also, because something really quick about ego that someone was teaching me this years ago, and it forever changed my viewpoint of it. I think when people think of ego, because we're talking a lot about ego, so like what is ego? A lot of times people think ego it just means like, oh, I think I'm better than everyone else. Ego literally just means me, me, me. So ego could also be the opposite spectrum. When someone has a big ego, it can be two ways. Either they have a big ego where they think they're better than everyone else, or they have a big ego where they think everyone hates them and the world's out to get them and they're the biggest victim. Both of those people have a big ego. So in my scenario, my ego was beating myself up and thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not a good friend. That's still ego. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah,
I have that ego.
Right. Yeah. And we all do. But I think that it's a really important thing to define ego as well, because people have such a warped view of it, only thinking it on one end of the spectrum when there's really both ends.
Right. 100%. And yeah, just to break down that ego, be vulnerable. A huge part of listening is vulnerability. And I know it's hard. Believe me, this is hard for me. Like, I'm sure this is hard for both of us.
We're really laying ourselves out there.
Yeah, like, yeah, I feel like vulnerable.
Which is great, and I love that, and I think this is exactly, like, we're doing everything that we're saying. And something you said, actually, that really rang the bell for me when you said, like, there is a difference between listening and hearing. It's funny you said that. I was smiling because throughout my journey with my mom, which I'm going to talk a lot about it because it was so many beautiful things in that, I remember in our journey of me like letting go of my pain, or at least sharing my pain, a lot of times I did walk away feeling not listened to. And I would literally, it's funny you said I was like smiling so big, because I would always tell my mom, you're hearing me, but you're not listening to me. And there is a huge difference, because you can hear someone's experience, pain, perspective, whatever. But if you aren't truly understanding what they are saying and where they're coming from, you're not really making, I won't say you're not making progress, but you're not truly giving them what they need in that moment. Yeah. Because part of listening, like we were saying, is breaking down that ego and is understanding where the person is coming from, regardless of you. And I think that's the hardest thing.
Yes, regardless of you is the key.
Because I'll tell you why. Like, it's easy to listen to someone saying a story about how mean their coworker is, right? Or whatever. But when it comes to a friend telling you about, hey, I didn't like how you did this, or I didn't like how you, or whoever, a sibling or whatever, like, I didn't like how you did this, that I think is the big difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when it comes to you, that's the harder part to listen. And I feel like this really brings us also into the 5 love languages, which I love. I actually just finished the book recently. Such a good book. But essentially, and we'll describe all of it, but this has been like a hot topic for me and my friends. Like, we're always like, okay, what's your love language? What's your love language? But I think the epitome of why it's so important to know each other's love languages, it really honestly coincides with listening and this concept that Shira and I are talking, and communication. But really about listening, because it's like, if you don't know someone else's love language, you can't really listen to their needs. So for example, there's 5 love languages. There's words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, quality time, and gift giving. And
I'm like trying to think which one I am. Well, probably all of them.
Well, so here's the concept. The idea is that every single human has all 5 love languages, but each human has usually 1 or 2 will stand out to each person of how they receive love the most. A lot of times the way we want to receive love is the way we give love.
Right.
And a huge reason why I read the book, it was really interesting. There's different dialects to each language. I think his name is Gary Chapman. Yeah. There's different dialects to each language, but essentially the whole point of the book was to show you can have a beautiful relationship with someone, romantic, familial, whatever, friendship. But if you don't know each other's love language, and if you're not speaking, there's one thing to know each other's love languages, but if you're not speaking in each other's love languages, each person is walking away feeling unmet, right? Unmet needs that we're referring to. So I could tell you, for me, like, my love language is words of affirmation and physical touch. Both of those things. And so, okay, so how do you even know your own love language? Because a lot of people will ask me that. And I think a lot of people kind of sometimes will struggle with it. And I feel like a very simple way to figure out your own love language is just asking yourself, when I feel upset,
what do you need?
Like, what?
What do you need?
Yeah, what do you need? Like, what can someone do in that moment to make you feel loved? So, for example, the reason why I know my love language is I ask myself that question, and what comes to mind is one of my older brothers. I absolutely love him. He's the best. Shout out to Momo. Momo that's my brother's name, Mordechai, but nickname Momo. He so many times over my just life, our lives, he, without even realizing it, he really meets my love languages. Like, for example, there's been a lot of times where he'll like walk me home after a family dinner and I'm just like crying. Just, you know, obviously family triggers you in many ways, and I'm very vulnerable. I'm crying the whole way, this whole 20-minute walk. And just throughout the walk, or even at the end, you know, when we're standing and we're talking, he will just hug me. He'll give me a huge hug for a good like 10 minutes. He'll like pat my hair, whatever. And he'll just say to me, like, it's okay, you're okay, everything's gonna be okay, you're so loved. Like, he just gives me, at the same time, he gives me a huge hug, which is the physical touch, and all the words of affirmation I need, that validation. And it's happened many, many times. And I'm so grateful to him, because when someone meets you in your love language or love languages,
you feel listened to, heard,
listened to. It feels the difference. If he, for example, instead gave me acts of service, which is not my love language, if he was like, well, I see that you're hurting, why don't I
buy you an ice cream?
Why don't I take you out to dinner? All those things are good. And trust me, I'm not going to say no to that. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make me feel loved and listened to as much as it will be, or it does, when he gives me a hug and gives me words of affirmation. You know?
Yeah.
Do you know your love language, Shira?
I think like between 3, it would be like words of affirmation. I know.
There's
I
only
think
5.
words of affirmation would be the biggest
like
one.
number 1.
And then like between quality time and acts of service, I'm not sure.
But why words of affirmation?
Definitely words of affirmation. I know, like, I like to give that to people. actually, like, I'm bad at it sometimes, but I know that I want that.
I love the self-reflection, right?
Because it comes from the ego, like,
Right.
you know, not also like from trauma of not wanting to be too much.
Yeah.
But I think words of affirmation is a big one. And yeah, I just really feel like seen and heard when, yeah, like someone could tell me like, Shira, like I like saw, like I see you, or like they like speaking it. I'm also very into like speaking and writing. I like to write. So like, yeah, I feel like that means the most to me.
Something also with my brother that I just, when you were talking, it reminded me, because this happened recently as well. Momo, same brother, we love him. Him and I got into a fight over the phone. I was saying this in a different episode. We got into a fight over the phone. And what made me really feel seen was what the words he said to me. He said, because we got into a fight over the phone, and then I'm processing, I'm heated, I'm pissed off. 20 minutes later, he calls me, and we calmly talked about it. We figured out our stuff. And then towards the end of the conversation, something that I really felt so seen, and again, it was his words of affirmation. He just said to me, "Thank you for not biting my head off when I called you, like when you picked up the phone." And for me, that just made me feel like more than us figuring out our stuff and like solving the issue. That to me was the biggest thing that made me feel so seen, because it was his words that recognized like I am trying to be calm and be understanding and be compassionate. And when someone speaks in your love languages or love language, you feel so listened to. And a huge thing about the book, because it's such a beautiful book, and truly I really recommend everybody to read it, because it talks all about relationships and it is applicable to every single human that interacts with other humans. But the major like baseline of the book is that you need to make sure to be speaking in other people's languages, because the guy who is this very famous psychologist or so, he's done this research for years. He literally says the number one issue, and like Shira was saying this earlier, like the number one issue in relationship conflicts is people speaking in different languages. And it doesn't mean you need to have the same language to have a successful relationship, but it really is just about knowing the other person's language and making the effort to speak in theirs. Because he gives a lot of examples throughout the book of all these couples who both are speaking their own language, thinking that they're showing love to their partner.
Because that's what they would want.
Because we always give love the way we want to receive love. But then each partner, what ends up happening, walks away feeling unloved and feeling like they put effort into the relationship and they're getting nothing in return. You know, so it's like, it's so sad to like read the book also, because you're like, oh, like if you just understood each other's love languages and listened to each other more,
and again, like breaking the ego, because
ego.
You're giving them what you would want, but you have to put yourself to the side and give them what they need.
It's everything. Like that's
And so like just to like wrap everything up, what we've been saying, I think there's two aspects to listening to others, listening to yourself, which is really important.
And both require letting go of the ego.
Both require letting go of the ego, and just trusting your instincts, trusting yourself, trusting other people, that they're just communicating what they need to be communicating, and listening. And it's actually interesting because my music brand, Virtual Music Reality.
Yes, shout out.
Basically, the name comes from like a virtual reality, right? Like a video game. You're like entering this immersive world that's not real. And the whole idea is that like music, when you listen to music, it can transport you into like a virtual reality that you create with yourself. And the whole idea of it is listening to every moment in life, because the whole thing with my brand is that like when you listen to every moment in life, and there's always going to be music. There's always a moment for every piece of music. But it's also the same with life. Like you just be aware, listen, and then you can actually see. Like that's the whole thing I say. Like when you listen, you can see. You're in a virtual reality, right? Like when you listen to someone, you can see where they're coming from. When you listen to yourself, you can see what you need.
I love that.
And I feel like listening gives you a clear vision.
It's such a powerful tool.
Like listening and sight is very...
Yeah, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to say the quote of the day, which is this. communicate to understand, not to win. And again, communicate to understand, not to win. I think that's the definition of listening. Is it's not about being heard or saying, not that you shouldn't say on your mind.
Listening is not about being heard.
But it's not about being heard.
I feel like that should be a quote in itself.
Yeah, I think also the only way to really be successful in relationships is to be able to understand the other person, because listening is understanding, and it comes with compassion. It comes with lack of ego. And with that, who doesn't want more peaceful, successful relationships in their life?
Yeah.
And the question for reflection.
Question of the day. So today we have a 2-part question. Part 1, what areas of your life do you struggle in? How can you listen to yourself better? Because like we said, it's about listening to yourself and listening to others. Number 2, think about a current conflict in any relationship you have. How can listening help resolve the conflict and deepen your relationship with the other person?
Because also that is, within that question, you said something so beautiful. Like the whole point of listening is to deepen our relationships with other people. I think for the first part, which is what areas of your life do you struggle in and how can you listen better? For me, and similar to Shira, I think it's myself. Even as simple as, sometimes I think I have like high expectations of myself. Like I want to push myself to, like, even as simple as like go to a hot yoga class. But during a time where I have zero energy, where I've given all my energy throughout the whole day, where what I really need in that moment is just to rest.
Yeah.
So as simple as that, I think it's just being able to listen to myself more of when I need to rest and when I need to do.
Yeah. I think for me also, it's just like trusting my instincts, listening to what I need. Like I think back to that toxic friendship that I had, and there were so many times where I picked up on things and I was just denying, and I wasn't listening to myself, and it's so important.
And then just leaving you guys one more time with this question, because I think Shira and I have already answered it in this episode. Think about a current conflict in any relationship you have. How can listening help resolve the conflict and deepen your relationship with the other person?
Food for thought, guys.
Food for thought.
See you next time.
Stay tuned. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
We hope this conversation helped you feel a little bit more seen, a little less alone, and reminded you to take a step back and zoom out.
We're grateful to have you all along with us on this journey together.
Stay tuned for our next episode.
Bye, friends.